The void of space shimmered outside the viewing deck, the planet below a swirling mass of deep purple clouds and silver lightning. The imperial capital, Zyros Prime, was a testament to the galactic empire's might, towers of obsidian and steel stretching into the artificial atmosphere, glowing with the cold radiance of absolute control. At its center stood the throne chamber, a vast circular hall of black marble and polished metal, where the fate of entire civilizations was decided with a whisper or a decree. The chamber was filled with the Emperor's Council, a collection of warlords, strategists, and bureaucrats, their uniforms stiff with medals earned through conquest. At the center of the room, standing alone before the raised dais, was the woman. She wore a tailored black suit, unadorned and efficient. No jewelry, no visible weapons, just the quiet confidence of someone who had stepped into the heart of an empire and did not fear it. Her hair was dark and bound behind her head, emphasizing the sharpness of her gaze. Steady, cool, assessing. She was not young, not old. Ageless in the way of those who had seen too much and survived it all. The Emperor leaned forward on his throne, armored fingers tapping against the edge of the armrest. His presence was undeniable. Taller than any human, draped in a regal crimson cloak, his obsidian black armor carved with runes of forgotten wars. His eyes, silver and inhuman, flickered with amusement and contempt. "You stand in my chamber," he said, his voice a low thunder. "A human, speaking on behalf of your world. Do you understand the absurdity of this?" The woman did not move, did not blink. "I understand that your empire is used to fear. You thrive on it. You expect it. And when it does not come, you assume it is ignorance." A murmur passed through the council. Some chuckled, others narrowed their eyes. The Emperor's gaze remained fixed on her, intrigued now. "You are here to negotiate," he said. "Yet I have taken systems from your kind without effort. Why should I waste words when war has already given me answers?" She took a single step forward. The guards along the perimeter tensed, but she did not acknowledge them. "Because you have not fought us. You have fought colonies, outposts, diplomats who carried words instead of knives." She tilted her head slightly. "You have never fought humanity as we are." The amusement in the Emperor's expression faded, just slightly. "And who?" he asked, voice quieter now. "Are you?" A question with many answers. She considered them all. She could tell him her official title, Envoy of the Unified Earth Council. She could tell him her name. Neither would matter. Instead, she gave him the answer that would. "I am the one sent when war is not an option, and when it is inevitable." The chamber fell silent. The Emperor studied her, his fingers tightening against the armrest. Then slowly he stood. "I have lived centuries," he said, stepping down from the dais. His armor, a fusion of ancient metals and living technology, whispered against the floor as he moved. "I have seen 1,000 species beg. I have watched empires rise and fall in the span of my lifetime. You," he gestured toward her with a gauntlet hand, "are nothing but flesh and arrogance." She met his gaze without flinching. "And you," she said, "are nothing but power without wisdom." The room exhaled in a sharp collective gasp. The warlords shifted, some instinctively reaching for their weapons. The Emperor's eyes darkened, but she saw something else now, something deeper. Recognition. "You do not fear me," he said. She didn't answer, because it wasn't a question. The Emperor took another step forward, and for the first time, she felt the weight of his presence fully. He was not just a ruler. He was a being carved from war itself, honed through endless centuries of conquest. His kind did not speak for diplomacy. They spoke in the language of broken worlds and surrendered banners. "Fear," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "That is what keeps order." "No," she corrected. "That is what ends it." For a long moment, neither moved. Then the Emperor exhaled, a slow and deliberate sound. "You believe you can stand against us?" "I believe," she said carefully, "that you do not understand what you are about to awaken." That, finally, was enough to crack the veil of amusement in his expression. He smiled, a terrible thing. Then show me, he whispered. He moved without warning. A blur of crimson and black, faster than human eyes should have been able to follow. His hand, massive and armored, reached for her throat with the intent of ending the conversation permanently. She was already moving. A twist of the shoulder, a shift of balance, and suddenly she was not where he expected. His grasp closed on empty air. A breath later, she was behind him, her stance no longer neutral but poised, lethal. The motion had been so fluid, so efficient, that the council had barely processed it before it was over. The emperor stilled. Slowly he turned his head. The chamber had changed. The guards were no longer merely watching. They were assessing. The warlords were no longer amused. They were wary. And the emperor, for all his power, had hesitated for the first time in centuries. Because in that instant, something unspoken had shifted. The woman had not just dodged him. She had let him see how easily she could have killed him. A slow breath escaped the emperor's lips, his gaze narrowing. "You," he murmured, "are not what I expected." For the first time since entering the chamber, she allowed herself the barest hint of a smile. "No," she said, "I never am." The silence that followed was suffocating. The emperor did not move, nor did the woman. Around them, the council remained frozen, eyes locked onto the space between their ruler and the human diplomat who had, in the span of a heartbeat, demonstrated the impossible. Then, with deliberate slowness, the emperor straightened, rolling his shoulders as if shaking off an unseen weight. His silver eyes gleamed, the eerie glow within them shifting from amusement to something sharper, something hungry. "You intrigue me," he murmured. "Few have done that and lived." She did not respond. There was no need to. The statement was a test, bait wrapped in curiosity, waiting for her to acknowledge the trap. Instead, she simply met his gaze, unflinching, and that, more than anything, infuriated him. The attack came without warning, but she had expected that. The emperor moved like a storm given form, his massive frame a blur of red and black as he struck with a speed that should have been impossible for something of his size. The air cracked around them as he closed the distance, a gauntlet fist sweeping toward her with enough force to shatter bone. But she was already gone. A shift of balance, a twist of motion so precise it seemed effortless, and his strike met nothing but the empty air where she had stood an instant before. The chamber erupted into motion. Guards surged forward, weapons raised, the once passive council now on their feet, their seats forgotten. The woman did not hesitate. As one of the emperor's elite soldiers lunged at her, she sidestepped, using his momentum against him. A flick of her wrist redirected his armored form into another incoming attacker, sending them both sprawling. Two more closed in, but she moved like a whisper between them, her hands snapping out. One strike to a joint, another to an exposed gap in their armor. They crumpled before they had a chance to react. The emperor watched it all unfold with a growing, burning rage. She was playing with them. With a snarl, he moved again, this time anticipating her evasion, adapting. His speed was no longer reckless but calculated. She avoided his first strike, but the second clipped the edge of her shoulder, sending a sharp shock of pain down her arm. Not enough to slow her, enough to make her adjust. She twisted mid-motion, shifting into a counterattack that should not have been possible against a being of his strength. Her hand shot forward, palm striking a pressure point along the side of his ribcage, one of the few places where his armor did not fully protect him. It wasn't enough to harm him, but it made him feel it. And that, more than anything, angered him. "You dare!" he snarled. His voice no longer calm, no longer amused. She met his glare, her own expression unreadable. "You attacked first," she said simply. He struck again, a backhanded blow that shattered the marble beneath them as she ducked beneath it. Before he could recover, she was already moving, her hand pressing against the ground for balance as she twisted into a calculated kick. One aimed not at his center, where he was strongest, but at the back of his knee. The force of it made him stagger. A fraction of a second. But enough. Enough for him to realize she had done what no other had dared. Enough for the council to see what should have been impossible. The emperor, the ruler of the most feared empire in the galaxy, had been forced to react. The weight of that moment filled the chamber, pressing down like a tangible force. The guards hesitated now, uncertainty flickering in their alien eyes. The warlords, once confident in their leader's absolute dominance, watched with something close to disbelief. The emperor exhaled, slow and controlled. "You are no mere diplomat," he said at last, his voice quieter now, but more dangerous for it. She straightened, rolling her shoulder where he had struck her. The pain was already fading, pushed aside as irrelevant. "I never claimed to be." His silver eyes narrowed, the glow within them shifting like molten steel. "Then what are you?" A question with many answers. She could tell him the truth, that she had been trained from childhood for war, that her people did not send envoys without ensuring they could also be executioners, that Baba Yaga was a name whispered in the dark by those who understood its meaning, by those who had seen what happened when humanity was pushed too far. Instead, she said nothing, because the emperor had already begun to understand. A slow, dangerous smile crept across his face. "I see now," he murmured. "You do not come to negotiate. You come to warn me." She tilted her head slightly. "Would you have listened otherwise?" The council held its collective breath. Even the guards had stilled, awaiting their ruler's response. For a long, stretching moment, the emperor did nothing. Then, without breaking eye contact, he raised a single hand. A silent command. The guards hesitated before stepping back, their weapons lowering. The council, though unsettled, did not protest. The air itself seemed to shift, the atmosphere no longer one of imminent violence but something more uncertain. The woman did not relax. That would have been foolish. Instead, she watched as the emperor studied her. The weight of his gaze something most would have crumbled beneath. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he let out a slow, quiet laugh. "Very well," he said. "Let us talk." The tension in the chamber did not ease, not entirely. The guards remained poised, their weapons no longer raised but their fingers still close to the triggers. The warlords did not return to their seats, their eyes flickering between their emperor and the woman who had forced him to hesitate. The air crackled with something unspoken, an expectation, an inevitability waiting to be acknowledged. The emperor settled back into his throne, the polished obsidian of his armor gleaming under the dim artificial light. His silver eyes, once alight with amusement, now held only calculation. "You speak of war as if it is not only certain but avoidable," he said at last. The woman remained standing, her posture unchanged. "It is both." A ripple of reaction passed through the council, some scoffing, others shifting uncomfortably. The emperor did not look away from her. "You presume much," he murmured. She allowed a small, almost imperceptible shrug. "I presume nothing. I state facts." The emperor's fingers drummed idly against the armrest, a motion too deliberate to be idle. "And what facts are those?" She stepped forward, the measured sound of her boots against the marble floor carrying through the vast chamber. "You believe you know humanity. You have studied our colonies, our outposts, our diplomats. You have conquered them with ease. But you have never fought us at our full strength. You have never forced our hand." His gaze flickered, sharp with interest. "And what happens when I do? You will learn why your empire will not survive it." Silence. The weight of her words settled over the chamber like a suffocating presence. Some of the warlords bristled, their pride demanding a response, but none spoke before their emperor did. He leaned forward slightly, studying her as though she were a puzzle he had yet to solve. "You believe your people would fight instead of kneeling? You believe they would win?" She held his gaze. "I believe we would make the cost too high for you to bear." The words landed like a blade between them. The emperor's lips curved, but there was no warmth in the expression. "You think highly of your species." "I think accurately." He exhaled through his nose, the sound almost amused. "You are unlike the others I have encountered. Because they were not me." A chuckle, dark and thoughtful. You remind me of a warlord I once fought. He too believed he could not be conquered. He was mistaken. She did not blink. I am not mistaken. His amusement dimmed. And if I were to test that? You already did. The chamber held its breath. For a long moment, the emperor was silent. Then, slowly, he leaned back, his expression unreadable. If war is inevitable, he said at last, then why are you here? She considered the question, though the answer was already clear. Because it does not have to be. Because war with us would be your greatest mistake. But peace could be your greatest advantage. A murmur ran through the gathered warlords. Some exchanged glances, uncertain whether to scoff or listen. The emperor's gaze did not waver. And what? He asked. Do you offer that I could not take by force? She tilted her head slightly. Survival. The word was a whisper of steel. It was not a threat. It was a certainty. The emperor's fingers stilled against the armrest. Explain. You believe your empire eternal, she said. You believe your dominance is absolute. But empires are not undone by enemies. They are undone by underestimating them. He listened, silent, watchful. You have won every war because none have been willing to burn the stars to stop you, she continued. We will be, and we will not stop. You will not face a surrender. You will not face diplomacy. You will face extinction. Not because we are stronger, but because we will make certain that if we fall, we take you with us. The warlord stirred, uneasy now. This was not the promise of defiance they were used to. This was something colder, something worse. The emperor studied her for a long, stretching moment. And if I believe you? He asked. Then you make a choice, she said. Do you wish to rule an empire of ashes? Or do you wish to wield a power you have never known? His eyes narrowed. And what power is that? She allowed the faintest trace of a smile. An alliance. The chamber fell silent once more. The emperor considered her, his expression unreadable. Then, after a long moment, he spoke. Interesting,